Hmm. All right. Hello. So, I keep having this variations of the same kind of struggle. And I want to talk about a different angle of it. It's showing up today. So, I had I had written. Well, the details of the writing don't matter that much. One of the things that had lit up in my awareness is the the whole arc about how well, now we are done with Trump, and um, it's possible that we are at this point as a, as a world. um, and there's something that's very, very clear to me when I'm staring at it, and I'm looking at the way that I'm not seeing a lot of conversations about this. There's this urge in me to push the point. Um, I'll go ahead and highlight this point quickly. I don't want to make this the main focus, but it seems important to name, to just to notice. Oh, well, where's this urge? What is the context for what I actually want to focus on? The energetics in myself here. The basic problem is that no matter what anybody thinks about Trump and Trumpism, Trump support, um, QAnon, any of that stuff, whatever anybody thinks about it, it's very obvious something that came up from some kind of desire. There was an energy behind it. And the response to that energy has been massive suppression. Largely narratives that are aligned with the kinds of things that Trump was talking about or that were pro-Trump, for the most part, are now just banned. I think those are not things that are appropriate on almost any medium. Sort of a forcible yanking of the Overton window, if you're familiar with the concept of the range of things that are considered to be acceptable to talk about. Although it's primarily because of censorship. Whatever we might, whether we think it's appropriate or not, I don't think there's a lot of debate. I hope there's not a lot of debate about whether what's been happening is censorship. So, and now with Trump out of office, there's this impression of everything's okay, in some sense. I mean, of course, not everything's okay, but in terms of whatever the forces were that had Trump doing his thing to the world, that the social circles that I've tended to be surrounded by are looking back going, oh, it's okay. Like, let's see what Biden does. We don't know, but it's got to be better than Trump. The problem that I've been looking at is, well, whatever anybody thinks about Trumpism, we didn't integrate it. It suppressed it. Absolutely, there's no question. This is a very clear example of desperately shoving something into the subconscious that we don't want to look at. I'm pretty successfully doing so. And that never works. It works in the short run, but it doesn't address the energies. The only cases where you see anything like it kind of working is when you end up with total extermination of everybody who carries an idea or an energy. It's sort of the ideological version of genocide. And I suspect that's happened a few times, but it's a little hard to tell. So just fact, just from large-scale observation, guaranteed, we're going to see something like Trumpism, only worse. This is when I refer to the law of shadow, this is what I'm gesturing towards. It's something I mentioned in The Myth of a Way 2 days ago. Basically, anything that if we don't want to deal with it, we shove it out of sight, try to do the out of sight, out of mind move. There's a law that basically says anytime you do that, you're going to end up with what you don't want to see rotting out of sight until it infects the things that are in sight. And either you can't ignore it or you die. That's just how it works. So guaranteed we're going to see the energies that created Trump in the first place arise again. But it will be nastier because the decision has been to suppress it. I don't know what that form is. I just guarantee it'll happen probably in about 4 years. So there's a lot more that I could say about that, but what I wanted to focus on was giving that bit of context and then using that to highlight something about my own urges, some of my own struggles. There's sort of a recurring struggle. I mean, it's like I want more words than struggle. This is not so much like an eternal wrestling match. It's more like, oh, okay, I've done some weeding in my garden, and some of these weeds keep regrowing. So part of the reason that I felt an urge to talk about it is because I notice basically no one talking about this, and I have this sort of feeling like they should. So I can see what's on the horizon. It's a little bit like you're in a bathtub and you just shoved a bunch of the water to slosh towards the other end of the pool, and then sitting there going, yay, the water level's lower. And I'm watching this going, you're about to encounter a problem. You're not going to like it. So said like that, there's a lot of cleanliness about it, a lot of energetic cleanliness. Just making an observation. I recently watched a video from Perry Chase where she described this as noting the difference between, hey, you have broccoli in your teeth versus you have broccoli in your teeth. There's a huge energetic difference. And I have some sort of gravitational pull towards the second one. The second one, for me, has more of this tone of, you have broccoli in your teeth! Wake up! And I can sort of blanket this in, I'm trying to care for you. But the reason there's an unpleasantness in being on the receiving end of that second one is because it's manipulative. It's disrespectful. It starts from an inner, on my part, from an inner alienation of respect for my listener's sovereignty. A distrust that you're doing you perfectly. That if you're doing things in a way that is different from what I think makes sense, then that says something about how much I understand you rather than about you doing something wrong. It's a little point that I keep slipping on. I understand it mentally, and when I remember it mentally, I can feel the shift in my guts. I can feel the more somatic, energetic shift. And then when I'm not looking, I say, look, you need to know about the law of shadow. Okay? Let me give you these pictures and this structure. Do you get it? This will come after you. And it's sort of like, oh, okay. Like there's truth to it. Fact. If we don't collectively pay attention to this, it's going to bite us collectively in the ass. Fact. But the urgency has sort of this tone of like it's an old habit from trying to save the world. I mean, I still want to do very good things by the world. I want to encourage some widespread, fantastic things. But the addiction to saving the world, I think it's appropriately called an addiction, and I'm dissolving that So the challenge here is, so first off, there's something that um, one of my colleagues one of my ex-colleagues used to refer to as attempted telekinesis. Because I think looking at the nation and going, the nation is not doing a sane thing. Maybe if I dislike at it enough, I can make it change. Never mind that what I'm actually doing is trying to distance myself from what is true. Trying to alienate my sense of now from what is real right now. So I can't make things change, even if everybody who listens to this is just completely persuaded and transforms their perspective, and they just go, oh, of course, law of shadow. I'm now going to pay very careful attention to this and integrate this as much as I can. I mean, eventually, I expect those kinds of moves, not necessarily from me, but maybe from me, but those kinds of moves to do a propagation throughout the human species, and eventually we can have something sane. But it's not going to come from all the people listening to this video. I think at my peak for video views, at least that I noticed, was still under 1,000, which is like 1/8 millionth of the population of Earth. So, yeah, very unlikely. Very unlikely to transform the whole scenario, even if I convey things super clearly, and it really strikes the people who listen to it. And maybe it can go viral, but I'm not expecting it. That's unlikely. That's not that won't happen. I know that won't happen. So where's the drive to create pressure? And this is a general thing that I've noticed about me. This one of the facilitators for my experiences in Mexico pointed this out, and I sat with it and went, I think this is something I need to integrate. I need to actually take a close look at. That when I experience a discomfort that is internal to how I work, I'm very quick. She didn't say it this way, but this is what I extracted from, okay, she points this out, and then how do I internalize this? Oh, this requires me to notice this bit about me. So, but I notice, in fact, that very commonly when I am uncomfortable with something in me, I will shift to focusing on other people and how to help other people. But the helping has a kind of rescuing tone to it. I've seen this tremendous insight. Let me tell you about it, because I can see what could happen for you if you were to really take this in. But when I'm making that kind of shift, I'm doing that instead of taking it in all the way myself. That is, in fact, the main impetus for me doing this whole in interaction with others, where I feel so tempted to teach. And sometimes I've been trying to slip into teaching to see, can I teach without doing this move? But I think that there's nothing wrong with me sharing what I know, and even with going, okay, I have something that if you want to take it up, I can offer it to you. So let me offer this for those who want it. And then to offer that as a teaching. If I can do that from an emotionally clean place where I'm respecting the sovereignty of whomever is listening, then I don't think there's a problem with that. But when I'm teaching instead of internalizing, that's a problem. It's a problem for me, and it feeds the problems in others to the degree that they're not doing their work, or to the degree that they are working on things that are outside their range, or that I'm triggering things in them that are outside the range of what work they're capable of doing yet. I'm sort of adding to a problem. I see something very clear, and maybe in a future video I might try to describe my vision of what I think the law of karma should be, like what I think that a concept should be referring to. But So what I notice here is what's actually going on when I'm looking around at this law of shadow and I'm looking at the situation with Trump. The actual thing going on, if I'm much more honest, is I'm scared. I feel fear. There's fear in my belly. I feel a kind of almost like a sadness and a contraction in my heart. There's a sense of whatever is coming next is going to be kind of brutal. And it doesn't have to be in some sense. So this is where I start to get my anxiety. Instead of it just being fear, it becomes anxiety because I'm trying to solve it. I'm trying to go, okay, how would we fix the problem? Oh, I can see the design of how to solve the problem. And part of this has to do with the principle of go willingly or be dragged. I can see it. I can see what would happen if the human race, or at least some reasonable small proportion of the American population were to make a shift towards the more spiritually mature. So this is a small shift. It's momentous in a particular way, but it's actually not that big. It's basically a shift towards recognizing that it's deciding to aim toward letting go of victim triangle energies. Excuse me, to integrate them properly instead of just acting them out. That's most of it. If enough of the population were to make a shift like that, there would be room for an idea about choosing to learn the lesson to arise. These ideas are already floating, but there's something about if we could just choose to learn the lesson instead of asking for death as a teacher, instead of refusing to learn and then waiting for death to show up and force the lesson. Death is the final teacher. Death is the guaranteed teacher. Death is the guarantee of kindness. I can see it very, very clearly. We are summoning death. So either we choose to willingly learn death's lesson, or death will teach us against our will. That's the collective choice, and I see it super clearly, and I'm scared. The reason I'm scared is really because, well, I mean, part of it is there's this unknown thing, but most of it, if I'm really honest, most of it is that I don't trust most people to choose to learn correctly. I'm kind of I have this streak of arrogance about that in particular. Kind of a standard of, I don't know, I think that I would have to guess about the structure. It's probably related to the way that I view myself as a learner. But also it's related to the way that I condemn myself and the way that I drive myself forward with, well, not so much anymore, but there are definitely remnants of habits, and they're showing up in the projections that I get about needing to learn, and when I encounter a lesson, taking it in, actually trying to take it in. There's a difference between, oh, this makes sense. Okay. Yeah. So that has cleanliness to it. There's a big difference between that and, okay, here's a lesson. I've got to learn it. I've been such an idiot. I need to take this in. I spent a lot of my life doing that second one. So I think that the energy that I use in order to do that kind of learning has a kind of condemnatory tone to it that turns inward. And so the default thing that I keep wanting to do when trying to teach others is encourage that same condemnation. it's not very socially nice. It's not very kind. I'm just now noticing, I didn't articulate it quite this clearly before. That's a result of me doing this video and going, oh, it's this piece, isn't it? And so I think there's some sort of combination of I am projecting this condemnation pattern I use in myself at others. And part of it is, I think implicitly, I don't think any part of me was thinking this, but I think if it were to work, the hope would be that what I would inject in others is the same kind of fear of, oh my God, this is important. I need to make myself learn this. And if I can inspire that or inject the meme in other people, then they can learn in a way that is kind of like what I do. I do have some very powerful learning tricks. Having this engine in the background has been helpful, but it's painful and it's unnecessary. There's a kinder one that is based on stillness and on clarity, on clear knowing. That one I have no fear about offering, demonstrating, embodying, and for those who want to listen, teaching. The closest I have to a fear of that is not of it, but of the cleanliness with which I can deliver it. And at the rate I'm going, I am quite sure that by the end of this whole 100 days of visibility, I will have it down. I mean, not perfectly, but enough that it'll happen. So mostly I'm wanting to show up and talk about this to anchor in myself this clarity of, right, it's not my job to teach others the way I learn. It is my job to let this come through me and to get out of the way. But this particular struggle is that it's this very specific mechanism, this very, very specific process where when I have a discomfort in myself, I'll very quickly snap over to pushing others, this attempted telekinesis type move. By the way, if you're curious about the concept of attempted telekinesis and what I've said doesn't make a lot of sense, if you Google attempted telekinesis less wrong, you'll totally find the article this is based on. I think the title of the article is Attempted Telekinesis, and it's on a community blog, lesswrong.com. Something like a decade old, I think. So a saving grace, like even while I was writing up the text for this live stream, I actually started by writing the law of shadow, and as I sat there with it, I had this sense of something's not clear here. I'm going to stare at this until it's clear, and then I will move forward. And part of the move that gave me some clarity, I mean, the 0th move, always the move before others, to ground in anything, to actually access clear knowing, and to clean out the confusion for me every time, is feeling the stillness. What I was aiming to transmit yesterday. But the move after that, like once I looked at it, and I noticed, oh, I have that pushing flavor. Like just from the stillness, I could look around and go, right here is where it's not right. And I just point right at the feeling where I'm pushing, where I'm inclined to go, look, see this thing we're doing with Trump, see this thing, like you get on board, and noticing the get on board kind of pressure. Oh. Normally, when I feel that pressure, that means that I am applying that pressure internally to myself often, and that at this moment I am uncomfortable, and that I am trying to tell others a lesson that I think I need to hear. Is that true right now? That move opened this up. It gave me the sense of, oh, I'm not trusting that others are learning. This, the reason I titled this Trusting Others Learning, there's a level at which The species is doing exactly what it needs to, because if it weren't, it would be doing something else. There's a kind of obviousness to this. And yes, they're currently invoking the law of shadow. Or currently the law of shadow is going to create a force that is going to really kick our collective ass hard. Hard. And we basically guaranteed that the United States cannot survive as it is another decade. We've guaranteed it. So 2020 wasn't enough of a blow, but it's there's no way to go back to 2015 United States. We've known about this for a while, but it's just guaranteed. Like looking this, our options are the destruction of the United States or the complete transformation. There isn't a version where we slog along. I sometimes get my time scales a little bit off, but I think it'll be incredibly obvious in a decade. I don't think it's going to take that long. But I'm still learning the oracular arts here, the actual functional telling of the future. Bearing in mind, I want to clarify my use of the word oracular there. When I say oracular, I consider the use of physics and careful measurement in order to predict the timing of the moon landing within a second. I consider that to be an example of using oracular arts. Along with when somebody has a really good intuition for what to predict in the course of a conversation and they're dead on, bam, 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 that's also a kind of oracular art. I don't mean something supernatural. I mean an actually successful method of telling the future, regardless of what paradigm it comes from. So I'm looking across this, I notice, okay, well, what we're actually observing, what I am observing, I should be more precise about this, what I am observing is, in fact, the United States that I am able to see, at least, parts of the United States that I can see, have not yet chosen to go willingly to learn the lessons of wisdom, to integrate. They've not learned the law of shadow. And they currently are not open to learning about it cognitively and then integrating it somatically. That's not a pathway that's available right now. So that means they need the school of hard knocks. And that's exactly what'll come. Education of reality, saying, no, you can't live in your psychotic fantasy anymore. It's too different. So your choices are adapt or die. When I orient to it that way, and instead of, I'm having trouble articulating exactly the energy that I want to say here. There's a tone in the background when I can feel it correct in my heart that has no judgment. It's not about, oh, look at these fuck-ups, they're not doing the right thing. It's much more the tone of, oh, this is where they are. It's like looking at a toddler who's really upset about the fact that their rubber ball won't open. They get really mad and they throw the rubber ball and they're really upset. Like, you know, on some level, the toddler just needs to go through that phase. They need to experience that there are some things that they will want in interacting with the world that the world won't provide for them, and then they need to dialogue that desire with the world. And some of that will involve some pain initially. This is part of the corrective process of coming to fit more closely with reality. It's necessary. Most toddlers, I think, who are well held and well emotionally supported won't experience a tremendous amount of frustration over not being able to open their rubber ball, but like to tear it open. But yeah, like what is is. So looking around at this widespread population and going, we seem to be on a roller coaster. And I'm scared, and I'm trying, and there's a part of me that is tempted to try to find ways to not be on this roller coaster. But I'm already on it, that's what's true. So what I'm actually saying is there are parts of me that are tempted to hold truth at an arm's distance. And that experience of that discomfort comes across in my consciousness as a desperate attempt to try to get everybody to wake up. But everybody is doing exactly what they need to do in order to fit to reality. I believe I have pieces that belong in the collective consciousness. There's a type of clarity, a type of precision in the void that I can see needs to be more present eventually. But it's not my call for whom, when, and where this is right. Other people's development is not my job. My job is me, to get out of the way, and then this kind of clarity that I seem to be well fashioned to, I seem to be an excellent conduit for, can come through more clearly. There's a part of me that's tempted to do a paradigmatic adjustment. For those of you having an allergic reaction to the implication that there are divine things that come through people and that there's a purpose in some sort of divine sense, let me make this adjustment for you. Actually, at this point, I'm not going to make the adjustment. I don't mean the thing that's going to rub people wrong. But if you're going to project that on me, go ahead. So I aspire to anchoring here, where I do the work of being clear and enjoying this life, of embodying the solution I now see to the problem of evil. I have a video called Solving the Problem of Evil earlier in this series. So if you're curious, you can take a look there. The main thing I wanted to show up with today was to anchor this more deeply in myself. And I hope it would be nice, it would be pleasant if it turned out that my doing so, my displaying myself this way, turns out to be helpful for others. And it looks like from some feedback I've been getting in private from people that this is doing some good things for some others. And that's pretty cool. But it's not really about that. Okay. And that's what I've got. Not seeing anyone happening to catch this live. So just a reminder, if you have put comments in here in the Facebook replay, you'll need to consider going back and tagging me so that I see your comments if you want me to see them. And if this is on, and if you're watching this on YouTube, I see the comments just fine. That's all. Thank you for watching.